Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast here to tell you about Michelob Ultra Courtside. It's getting fans closer to the NBA with a chance to win prizes like courtside seats, a trip to All-Star Weekend, and much more. Check it out at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access, Courtside 24-25 sweepstakes, no purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 and up. Begins on October 1st, 2024, ends July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/courtside for free entry deadlines, and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Hello and welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I would be absolutely happy to have you. Text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. Get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast. Follow me on social media. There's breaking news happening at this moment I need to mention to you briefly. Governor Ron DeSantis has signed an order sending the Florida National Guard to the ports of Jacksonville, Miami, and elsewhere in the wake of the dock worker strike, ensuring that ships will still be unloaded. Is ordering the Adjutant General to activate the Florida National Guard as needed to deal with the emergency, and ordering the Director of the State Guard to activate the Florida State Guard as needed to deal with the emergency, and is ordering a waiver of tolls and other fees and charges in order to ensure that safe passage of cargo, and waiving size and weight restrictions for divisible loads on any vehicle transporting all goods from seaports. And to establish alternative size and weight restrictions for those vehicles. In other words, they'll be able to put heavier loads on single trucks and get the cargo out of the ports while the strikers strike. So ports will stay open in Florida thanks to the Florida National Guard. Okay, we got to move on. And before I do, I actually want to take a phone call here. I don't want to leave Logan waiting with this because I suspect we're going to start hearing this a lot. I'm already getting it from friends. So, Logan, welcome. How are you?
Doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm great. All right. So, as I understand it, you're in the category of people who are wondering, could it be that they're dragging recovery efforts out because all these people are Trump voters?
So I do fall into the camp a little more malicious than incompetent. Up front, I'll say that. The two states that were hit the hardest do seem to be the swing states. And is that a possibility? Hillary Clinton did say, never let a crisis go to waste. And it seems that this could be an opportunity to keep people's focus on recovery versus the election. My second question is, if recovery efforts, let's say they work as fast as they can, if recovery efforts aren't completed, how do those people vote if their precincts aren't open? And I'll hang up and let you get to it. Thank you.
All right, yeah, absolutely. And Logan, I got to tell you, I got to be honest. In my heart of hearts, I wouldn't put it past some progressive in the White House to look at this and think, Donald Trump only won North Carolina by a few thousand votes, but 200,000 of his votes in North Carolina came from the people affected by this hurricane. What if something happens to those people? I can't help myself but go there because the left has made politics their religion. But at the same time, the recovery effort's so much more than the White House. And this is a problem for the White House. Go back to Katrina. It was the Republicans in charge. And Republican voters in Louisiana voted Democrat because they were infuriated with the recovery effort. They then ultimately threw out Kathleen Blanco because of her incompetence and brought Republicans in because they realized that a lot of the state-level incompetence was actually the Democrats. And they threw Kathleen Blanco out, put Bobby Jindal in the governor's mansion there, and swept in Republicans. But originally they turned on the Republicans because of Bush. The Democrats, if they politicize this, are playing with fire for a couple of reasons. One, the Republicans in North Carolina have a one-seat supermajority in the North Carolina House and a one-seat supermajority in the North Carolina Senate. If you really infuriate the people in the Asheville area because of your incompetence, the Asheville area is a hotbed of Democratic support in Western North Carolina. Those people are going to vote Republican if you make them mad. Now, what about the mountain areas? Those people are Republican, and they actually do need to do due diligence to get precincts open. My concern is very much like post-Katrina Louisiana. A whole lot of those people had to pack up and leave, and they moved to Texas. A lot of voters in South Louisiana became Texas voters because of Katrina, and it took them about a decade to actually start moving back to Louisiana, and it really did shape the map. There is a political element of this that is beyond Democrat and Republican. It's just the natural disaster. If your homes are not livable, they can't, in the best case scenario, they're not going to rebuild a house in the next 2 months. So where do you live? Do you move into itinerant housing? Do you get an apartment somewhere? Do you move to Kentucky? Do you move to Tennessee? Do you move to eastern North Carolina? It's just by the virtue of the disaster going to reshape the political map in North Carolina. And it is absolutely true that Donald Trump won North Carolina by a slim margin, and 200,000 of his votes came from the area hardest hit. I don't think we can put it past Democrats to think, this could fundamentally change it. But I don't think there's going to be willful maliciousness, and I know many of you will decide it because you hate the Democrats that much, and nothing I can say will deter you. And if you want to go down that road, that's fine. But I do want you to understand that is your hardened idols. It's not reality. It is hardened idols that are pushing you with your hatred to be like that. At the same time, I do think that there's a balance here on the level of people in the White House who look at these things and think, I don't know, it maybe, just maybe, we could slow this thing down. In North Carolina, I'm looking, Donald Trump won by 74,483 votes in North Carolina in 2020. 74,483. 205,000 of his votes came from the area impacted by the hurricane. You don't have to go, though, to the maliciousness of Democrats to understand that the size and scope of the disaster was so big that it absolutely could, in addition to the death toll, it could absolutely force people to move, and those votes will go elsewhere. If they stay in North Carolina, those votes will just be shifted somewhere else in North Carolina. I do think this, though. There is a level of passion for Donald Trump that if this recovery doesn't go well, that passion for Trump turns into rage against the Biden machine. See what I did there? And those people will find a way to vote. Just think about this. If you are furious with FEMA and you're furious with Biden, wouldn't you find a way to vote? Wouldn't you find a way to vote? There are procedures, there are disaster procedures for voting. You may have to vote by a paper ballot. You can't vote by machine, but you'll be able to vote. So if you're enraged by what happened, don't you then decide you're going to take it out on Joe Biden? You find a way to vote. Where there's a will, there's a way. And these people in Western North Carolina hate, outside of the Asheville area, they hate Joe Biden. And every little bit of government incompetence is going to fuel their rage. That is why, if I had to call it, I actually think that this winds up politically, crassly benefiting Donald Trump. because I think that the government is always incompetent. I think a lot of people interpret that incompetence as maliciousness. And I think that fuels a rage that ensures those people are going to find a way to vote. And they're going to vote for Donald Trump. If I were a Democrat, I would really fear the Asheville area because it's a hotbed of Democratic support. But that area has occasionally voted Republican. And the times that it's voted Republican, it's been over outrage about Democratic behavior. And if the recovery effort is screwed up, those people are going to be mad, and they are going to blame the Democrats because it is Roy Cooper and it is Joe Biden. And by the way, as an aside, I think that is a reason why it was a mistake for Mark Robinson to sit out the emergency declaration. If you're not familiar with this, Mark Robinson is the Republican candidate for governor. Obviously, you know who he is, but he is on a council of state which voted to give Roy Cooper emergency powers. That the emergency powers in North Carolina simply waive regulation, make it easier to get things done without a lot of bureaucratic red tape. And Robinson decided to avoid the meeting, so it was a unanimous declaration of an emergency. Without Robinson's vote, he could have been there. And what Robinson then is he decided to do his own private relief effort and find some people who would give him some money to hire some planes and send supplies and do it as a PR spectacle. That makes it look like crass political maneuvering, and that's going to blow up in Robinson's face. It was politically tone deaf. And a lot of people say, oh, this is great politics. He's going to show what he can do. People aren't interested right now in red versus blue in Western North Carolina. They're not interested in Republican versus Democrat. They're interested in staying alive. They're interested in their neighbor they haven't heard from for a week. Can someone go make sure they're okay? And Robinson trying to turn it into a political stunt is not going to go well. And there is a danger that that sort of crass political maneuvering blows up in Trump's face because Trump was an original supporter of Robinson's. This is a dangerous way to think about politics. But this is y'all. I'm preaching to myself here more than I am to anyone else. When your first reaction is to believe the bad motivations of other Americans in time of disaster for politics, you're actually saying something far worse about yourself than you are them. Because what you're doing is you're putting a political idol front and center by making things about politics and seeing everything through a political lens. You see, your worldview, particularly if you're a believer, your worldview is supposed to be a faith worldview. God's in charge. All things work for the good of those called according to purpose. But when you put your political lens first, that becomes your idol. You see everything through raw politics, and all things work for the good of those called according to the purposes of political manipulators. And it poisons you in how you interact with others and view the world. And yes, absolutely, myself included, I look at this and say, yeah, I suspect there are Democrats in the White House right now saying, well, gosh, this is good for us. All those people won't be able to vote for Trump. Let's slow down the recovery till the election. Except all that does then is it fuels a rage of those people, and they find a way to go vote, and you can't stop them from voting. They'll find a way. They'll find a way. You got 2 months between now and the election. They're going to find a way off their mountain and vote for Trump. And by the way, if they all die, that is going to be a massive, massive PR disaster for the Biden-Harris administration. So it doesn't hurt us to delve into the political ramifications of it, but understand it's far more complicated than a binary. And it is a situation where everybody should really be focused on survival. By the way, buddy of mine, Matt, who is he loves to go to the airport, take photos. Some of you know who I'm talking about here in Atlanta. Just adore the guy. He sent me a screenshot. The amount of military helicopters now in the air headed inbound to eastern Tennessee and western North Carolina should warm your heart. There's a massive, massive convoy of helicopters from the military headed that way. If you have a plane finder app, like I use Plane Finder, You can see this massive number of military helicopters in the air now. The relief and support is on its way, and they're going to be working day and night, so good for them.
Sephora's biggest sale of the year is on. Get 20% off the best gifts, including makeup from brands like Rare Beauty.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
20% off skincare from brands like Glow Recipe and Summer Fridays.
These are my fave.
20% off hair care like Way and K18.
I'm obsessed.
And 20% off fragrances like Valentino, Donna, Born, and Roma.
So good.
20% off your purchase, now through December 15th. Shop now at Sephora and Sephora at Kohl's.
Well, and here we go. Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation, has shut down aviation into the Asheville, North Carolina airport. Unless there has been advanced permission to land there, only government flights will be allowed. Civilians trying to ferry supplies will not be allowed. What a bureaucratic blunder this is. Now, to be sure, I understand that the airport there actually is overwhelmed with a lot of military activity right now. But at the same time, the default by progressives, and Pete Buttigieg is very much a progressive, is that trust the government, let the government handle this. Completely unaware of the fact that people distrust the government. And what they say is that, well, they distrust the government because of all the misinformation online. No. The misinformation exists because people already distrust the government, and now people are growing that distrust. If you were competent and allowed civilians to come in and take care of things, you wouldn't have this distrust. But the default to progressives is that individual civilians working at arm's length transactions together is bad. Government doing it is good. And so Buttigieg has defaulted to shutting out civilian help in favor of the government. But the government can never do things as efficiently or effectively as the private sector. So this is it. The Western North Carolina airport shut down to civilian aviation without prior government permission to fly in there. It's just ridiculous that they would do this. And of course, now there are immediately people going online say, well, this is because they want the people of Western North Carolina to starve to death because they're Trump voters. What a boondoggle this is going to be. You know, I would point out that when Buttigieg was on paternity leave, no one missed the guy. Everything he tends to do with his job makes it worse for everyone in America. He just loves using the power of government, convinced it's making things better for everybody when it's not. That is Pete Buttigieg. And in this situation, it is actually going to hinder the efforts to get people taken care of. And, you know, the wild thing is I'm looking at the radar right now of the number of planes and helicopters in the air in Western North Carolina. That is very congested airspace right now with a lot of people trying to help. And a lot of those small planes are civilians trying to run supplies to parts of Western North Carolina where there are no roads. And he'd rather the government do that. The government needs to be rescuing people. Let the water in from the private civilians. Old Glory Bank, they've got Old Glory Alliance, and they're willing to help fund relief in Western North Carolina and crowdsource funding for help like so many others out there. This is one of the reasons I love Old Glory Bank is they are so innovative and willing to respond rapidly to events like setting up a crowdfunding portal with Old Glory Alliance in order to help the people in Western North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and Georgia, and Florida who have been ravaged by the storm. They are great people with a great heart. They can be your bank. If you go to oldglorybank.com, it takes less than 8 minutes to fill out the form online. You can get a no-fee checking, no-fee savings account. You can get business checking. You can get business savings. You can get mortgages. You can get loans. They are such a fantastic bank. They're my bank. I've enjoyed using them so much for over a year now as my primary bank. I now actually have invested in the bank. That's how much I stand by them. They're a great bank. They can be your bank. All you have to do is go to oldglorybank.com. Oldglorybank.com. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. Oldglorybank.com. It really is my bank.
With Lululemon, the real gift happens when they're living in it. When you give them the softest loungewear set, the real gift is this. And this. And this. This holiday, Lululemon makes it easy to give a gift that goes beyond. Open the moment. Shop now at lululemon.com.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. It's Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425 should you wish to be on the program. Now, I'm going to break this down as promised. The data that suggests Donald Trump is going to win the election, and the data that suggests Kamala Harris is going to win the election. You should understand one of the reasons you're seeing all of the massive fluctuations in polling right now is it is the nature of a tied race. And some of the best pollsters out there, and I'm going to credit the New York Times, which is not as good in presidential years as in off-year elections. A lot of it has to do with measuring voter enthusiasm, things like that. But they're willing to put out their polling that is anomalous, their polling that is an outlier. Basically, if you talk to pollsters, they'll tell you about 1 in every 10 polls is an outlier. Sometimes the New York Times outliers for Siena turn out to be actually the ones that are right. When you find a pollster out there that never has an outlier in their results, never has a wild swing, they are trying to conform their results after they get them. They're adjusting their model to avoid outliers, and those really aren't the most reputable pollsters. In a tied race, the pollsters who are willing to publish their outliers make things look more volatile than they are. They're actually being honest, though, with their polling. Occasionally they get a bad poll, and they're not unafraid to put it out there and let everybody ridicule it and cast doubt on it. They themselves sometimes do. But that causes a bounce around. But right now we are a very tied race. It is tied nationally, and it is tied in all the battleground states. In Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, it is a tied race. But a tied race benefits Donald Trump. A tied race benefits Donald Trump for one particular reason. Historically, in 2016, 2018, 2020, 2022, Donald Trump always outperforms his polling. It's most notable, obviously, when he's on the ballot, but in areas of the country where there is strong Trump support, oftentimes his candidates did better than the polling suggested, which does suggest that candidates who are MAGA people who are identify as MAGA, the Make America Great Again crowd, they're less likely to talk to pollsters. They're less likely to answer their phone if they don't know the number calling. And so in a tied race, that does benefit Donald Trump. But the data trend lines also benefit Donald Trump. So 60% of Americans believe we're on the wrong track. 65% of registered voters, according to NBC News, believe we're on the wrong track. Jeff Horowitz of Hart Research Associates, who's a Democratic pollster, says this is a warning sign for the Democrats. Not only that, I've mentioned this now twice, that when you look at Gallup's historic measures of electoral outcome, nearly all of them favor the Republicans winning. Going back to 1948, the key measures of the election have been one of the best indicators of who's going to win, and they all basically favor Republicans. What are they? 48 party identification. 48% of voters say they lean Republican, 45 Democrat. What party is better able to handle the most important issues? The Republican Party outperforms the Democratic Party. How satisfied are you with the state of the country? Only 22% satisfied. What party is better able to make America prosperous? 50% Republican, 44 Democrat. What's the president's approval rating? 39%. What party has higher favorability? The Republicans by a point, only 43%. What party is better able to keep America safe? 54% of Americans say the Republican Party. Which party Do you prefer the government to do more or less? 55% want the government to do less. That favors the Republicans. Congressional approval is only 20%. On all of the major metrics the GOP performs, other than favorability ratings and congressional approval, the fact that 55% of Americans want government to do less is a big tell. Likewise, Donald Trump has 46% approval, Kamala Harris 44% approval. That Kamala Harris has gotten a bounce, but it's not higher than Donald Trump, is a warning sign for the Democrats. And in fact, among independents, 60% have an unfavorable view of Kamala Harris. In the Sun Belt, that is Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, more voters believe Donald Trump will improve their lives than believe Kamala Harris will improve their lives. The number of people who want to do mass deportation of illegal immigrants tops 50%, the highest number ever. The number of people being killed by fentanyl in this country affects 40% of the population. 40% of the population knows someone who has overdosed on fentanyl. And they blame the open border. And they blame the open border on the Biden-Harris administration. Likewise, Hispanic voters are moving rapidly to the GOP. And in Pennsylvania, it's a tied race, but Republican registrations are surging. And in Michigan, you have House Democrats warning something's happening in Michigan. The race is getting closer. In Wisconsin, the race is tied. In Wisconsin, polls typically overstate support for Democrats, so if it's tied, the Republicans are probably in the lead. All of these factors suggest Donald Trump is going to win. All of them suggest Donald Trump is going to win. But there are factors that actually suggest Kamala Harris is going to win. The macro data, the picture as a whole suggests Trump's going to win. But that's surveys of all Americans or registered voters. When you actually look at the people most likely to vote, they hate Donald Trump. This is oftentimes hard for either side to comprehend. And particularly with Donald Trump, it is such his supporters over his base loves him. Donald Trump's base adores Donald Trump. They think he singularly has their interests at heart. They think he fights for them. They like Donald Trump a ton. And it's hard for them to understand that a majority of Americans, a majority of American adults, not just registered voters, not just likely voters, but a majority of American adults hate Donald Trump. If you don't know someone who hates Donald Trump, you are in a bubble of your own choosing. Some of the people who hate Donald Trump will vote for Donald Trump because they like his policies more. That's something the media, by the way, tends to forget, that there are people who hate Trump, but they'll vote for him. The media looks at this and says, oh my gosh, a majority of Americans hate Donald Trump. There's no way he can win. Yeah, they may hate him, but they liked having a good economy and no global wars, so they'll vote for him. But a majority of American adults hate Donald Trump. And among the voters most likely to vote, that is voters who voted in 2016 and 2020. They're most likely to vote in 2024. And overwhelmingly, a majority of them, not a plurality, but a majority of them say they're voting for Kamala Harris. Now, that gets to the low propensity voters. Donald Trump wins them overwhelmingly. Donald Trump wins working class voters overwhelmingly. Working class voters are low propensity voters. They tend to get busy with jobs and they don't show up. The professional class puts election day on their calendar. The professional class is the one that wants the election day to be a holiday. And those people tend to be Democrats, and they tend to vote regularly, and they're going to vote against Donald Trump. So all of the overall macro election picture favors Donald Trump, but when you get into actually who's voting, well, those people, they don't like Donald Trump. He's got to turn out the low propensity voters. The problem with that is the Trump ground game. And this is another reason Kamala Harris has an advantage in the election. Donald Trump made the decision because of a lack of resources, given all of his legal woes, that he would outsource his ground game to third-party groups. And those third-party groups are not doing it. I was actually told yesterday, the rumor in Trump world and MAGA world is that Charlie Kirk has now been shut down on his ground game because he wasn't meeting the metrics that he claimed he could meet. I don't know whether that's true or not. Just to be clear, don't know whether it's true, but I heard it from someone I trust who knows about the ground game and has kept me informed about it, that they're trying to rework that. Likewise, the Trump team decided to rely on an all-volunteer army instead of paid supporters. So the volunteers go when they can go. The volunteers who get paid are the ones who make it their full-time job. And Harris is using paid operatives to knock on doors, but they're paid operatives who love Harris. They're not just random people hired off the street. They're people who love Kamala Harris, and they're like, hey, we'll give you a job. You love her so much. Go tell everybody about her. The Trump team's working with volunteers who aren't paid. They're now trying to convert a number of those volunteers into paid staff, but it's a lot to do in a little bit amount of time. So when you take the voters most likely to vote hate Trump and are voting for Harris, and the fact that he's got to generate a operation that can get low propensity voters to go vote, and his ground game sucks, that gives Kamala Harris a huge advantage. There's one more major advantage to Kamala Harris. And again, the macroeconomic data, the macro political data, it all favors Donald Trump. But a majority of Americans hate him. The majority of people most likely to vote hate him. He doesn't have a ground game, and there's this. Of the two candidates, which candidate generates the most stress? Hands down, Donald Trump wins. He stresses people out. He gives people anxiety. People don't like him, and he gives them anxiety. That's not a good sign. So here's the bottom line here. If people show up at the polls and are concerned about their future, they're going to vote for Donald Trump and he's going to win. If people show up at the polls and they are concerned about their anxiety in the political system, they're going to vote for Kamala Harris and she's going to win. The Trump team, therefore, must play to the issues. The Harris team must play to people's fears and anxiety about Trump. And that actually gives Donald Trump the advantage in the election. And that's why I still think he's probably going to win right now. Things can change. Trusts his ability to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. But Kamala Harris has to so focus on Donald Trump, and all Donald Trump has to do is point out to people that Kamala Harris is going to give you more stress than him. He can turn that weakness into a strength by saying, oh, you think I stress you out? This woman's an incompetent, vapid word salad. She's going to get us into World War III. Do you really want that? I kept you safe. And that, I think, matters greatly. That, I think, fundamentally shifts the election in a way that favors Donald Trump ultimately on all those data points. So that's it. That's why Donald Trump should get elected. That's why Kamala Harris should get elected. One is an emotional appeal and one is the data. Now, let me get to Hillsdale College. Dr. Larry Arnn has been running. I don't know how long Dr. Arnn has been there, but he's done a remarkable job turning Hillsdale College into a place that educates, that doesn't indoctrinate. Did you know they don't take any federal money at Hillsdale College, by the way? So every kid who shows up, they've got a great alumnus scholarship program, but they also, all the kids are able to get jobs and they're able to pay their way through school, and they learn the balance, the responsibility of education and work. It's just such a great school. and they've been providing so much of their education free of charge to all of us. All you have to do is go to ericforhillsdale.com, ERICK, ericforhillsdale.com. In fact, if you get on your favorite podcast app, you can get their podcasts, the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. A lot of very free, great, illuminating educational content. You can go to ericforhillsdale.com and you can find out how to get Dr. Arndt's lectures on the Constitution or Victor Davis Hanson's series on citizenship. You can do it at your own pace, free of charge. You can get them Primus, completely free, delivered to your mailbox every month. It is a fantastic catalog of the speeches, conversations that happen at Hillsdale College, great transcripts, very thought-provoking. Go to ericforhillsdale.com today, ERICK. Look, begin a relationship with Hillsdale College, and it improves your mind and sharpens your thinking on the issues of the day, but also it's just a great institution to get to know, and particularly if you're a parent and you got a kid, they might want to go there. Every kid I know who's gone to Hillsdale has been brilliant. Except for maybe Raz, but, I mean, he's a good guy. He's listening right now. They're great. Hillsdale is fantastic. Eric for Hillsdale.com. Go check them out today.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And, of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
Hello, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Ron, I want to go to your phone call. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Well, thank you. I enjoy your show.
Thank you.
I'm concerned about this situation with the strike and the ports. And the reason for my concern is I spend part of my life on a cruise ship as a technical lecturer. And so I've been to, in the last year, I've been to the major ports of the Mediterranean. I just returned from Southeast Asia for my second trip this year. And, excuse me, it's incredible of how much of the goods that we use on a daily basis come in through the cargo containers. About 80% of the world's produce moves in these ocean-bound cargo container ships. Mm-hmm. And, for example, in Taiwan, in a 12-hour period, I was down by the port there, and I watched some ships coming and going. 2 fully loaded cargo container ships left Taiwan in a 12-hour period bound for the United States. Last week I was in Singapore. 38% of the world's economy travels around the port of Singapore.
Got about a minute.
Excuse me?
Got about a minute.
Okay. All I want to do is take a look at this subject and see how devastating this is going to have on our economy. It'll be a political issue, and it's just something I wanted to call to your attention.
Ron, I'm glad you said that. And by the way, I saw a picture of the port of Singapore today with a massive number of ships that are backed up there, in large part because if they go east now, or west rather, they got to figure out a way around the Red Sea because of the Houthi. If they come west, our ports are closed. So you got this massive pile of ships that are just sitting there with nowhere to go. And yeah, it is going to have we're going to have, people are making runs on toilet paper again. By the way, a lot of the toilet paper is domestically produced, so it's not impacted by the cargo ships. Most of our toilet paper is actually sourced here. It's not coming from China. But people are running on the toilet paper now. But these ports on the East Coast going to be a problem. The West Coast ports right now are open. They settled that issue. But, man, it's still a nightmare situation. Going to be a lot of cars that can't get sold coming on the East Coast. And remember, those ships that are coming, they're having to avoid the Red Sea as well. So it is a mess. It's got to be dealt with. I want the longshoremen to get more money, but I want more automation as well. And we're going to have to figure out how to balance that out because they do deserve more money. They worked through COVID when a lot of other people didn't. But also, we need more automation.